A massive Chinese naval force launches a surprise assault on America's most strategic offshore installation, but the outcome defies all expectations. September 12, 2025. Under the cover of pre-dawn darkness in the contested waters of the South China Sea, Beijing executed what they believed would be their masterstroke. Their target, the colossal United States Freedom Rig, a towering 400-foot maritime fortress weighing more than 120,000 tons, protected by an elite marine detachment positioned mere miles from the action. Emerging from the distant horizon came an intimidating armada, a massive 65,000-ton aircraft carrier accompanied by 6 state-of-the-art Type 052D destroyers and 4 advanced frigates, all moving in perfect tactical formation. Their combined firepower was absolutely devastating. 10 precision cruise missiles, 5 sophisticated electronic warfare planes, and 10 heavy bomber aircraft carrying a combined payload exceeding 40,000 pounds of explosive ordnance. This arsenal possessed enough destructive capability to level an entire metropolitan area. From a tactical standpoint, Beijing had orchestrated what appeared to be the perfect surprise attack. China's strategy involved deploying 120 gigawatts of electronic jamming power to completely blind American surveillance systems, neutralize all defensive capabilities, and deliver a crushing blow to Washington by obliterating this critical energy infrastructure. The intended global message was crystal clear. The South China Sea now belonged exclusively to Beijing. However, overconfidence in warfare often proves deadly. Within moments, the peaceful night transformed into a devastating conflict that would claim thousands of lives, send billions of dollars worth of warships to the ocean floor, and permanently alter the strategic balance throughout Asia. So how exactly did America respond when facing complete electronic warfare blackout? How were incoming missiles intercepted when radar systems went completely dark? I'm about to reveal the extraordinary truth. September 12, 2025. At exactly 3:15 a.m. local time, the calm surface of the South China Sea was disturbed by the presence of a naval force that had no legitimate reason to be in those waters. The People's Liberation Army Navy had deployed one of their most powerful battle groups, a 65,000-ton aircraft carrier, 6 Type 052D guided missile destroyers, and 4 Zhangkai-class frigates advancing in precise formation like apex predators stalking their target. Their objective was terrifyingly obvious. The United States Freedom Rig, Asia's largest strategic offshore platform, defended by a forward-deployed U.S. Marine garrison positioned just 48 nautical miles from the approaching threat. At precisely 3:27 a.m., the initial assault phase commenced. 10 long-range cruise missiles launched into the darkness, each programmed to completely destroy the American installation. 5 Y-9 electronic warfare aircraft followed closely behind, saturating the electromagnetic spectrum with more than 120 gigawatts of interference, effectively blinding the sophisticated radar systems designed to monitor the airspace. Finally came the devastating finishing blow. 10 JH-7 fighter bombers screaming in at low altitude, each loaded with 4,000 pounds of high-explosive ordnance intended to complete the destruction. Tactically speaking, this represented a flawless ambush scenario, a coordinated strike utilizing nearly $500 million worth of advanced munitions, all concentrated on a single target in a bold attempt to sever America's energy lifeline and humiliate its military presence in the region. Beijing's intended message couldn't have been clearer. The South China Sea now belonged to China. But military history repeatedly demonstrates that battlefield arrogance often leads directly to catastrophic failure. Even as Chinese commanders began celebrating their anticipated victory inside the American garrison, a completely different narrative was developing. For every missile launched, there was a defensive countermeasure prepared and waiting. For every aircraft in the sky, there was a determined gunner on the ground, ready to engage in hand-to-hand combat if circumstances demanded it. What's your assessment? Do you believe the Chinese military possessed the capability to completely destroy U.S. military radar systems? Share your thoughts in the comments section. At 3:29 a.m., something unprecedented occurred. The advanced AN/SPY-6 radar arrays protecting both the Freedom Rig and its garrison flickered once, then completely shut down into total darkness. For a terrifying 5-second period, the outpost was rendered completely blind. The Chinese electronic warfare systems had apparently achieved their objective, or so Beijing's commanders believed. Inside the U.S. Command Center, the room was bathed in pulsing red emergency lighting. Computer monitors flickered erratically, systems froze completely, and electronic defensive systems collapsed sequentially. Yet the American response was far from chaotic. Colonel James Marston, a battle-hardened veteran with 2 decades of combat experience across Middle Eastern and Pacific theaters, slammed his fist decisively on the command table and issued a single clear directive: switch to manual operations. Fight using direct human control. What transpired next amazed even the most experienced Marines. Teams of forward observers rapidly climbed to elevated rooftop positions equipped with thermal imaging scopes and laser range-finding equipment. Gear worth merely a few $1,000s compared to the $20 million Chinese jamming systems. Anti-aircraft batteries, now completely blind to radar input, were guided entirely by human vision and battlefield instincts honed through years of training. Every single operator had been extensively trained for exactly this nightmare scenario, and tonight that rigorous training became life-or-death reality. At 3:32 a.m., the first missile sliced through the darkness, streaking toward the garrison at nearly 550 miles per hour. Private Sanchez, only 22 years old, accurately called out the incoming trajectory. Seconds later, a Stinger missile launcher roared to life. Direct hit achieved. A brilliant explosion illuminated the night sky as the $2 million Chinese missile was completely destroyed by a $120,000 American interceptor. One after another, the incoming missile salvos were systematically eliminated. By 3:36 a.m., 9 out of 10 cruise missiles had been destroyed during flight, and 7 out of 10 Chinese fighter bombers were burning wreckage scattered across the South China Sea. The defenders had transformed their manual defensive systems into an impenetrable barrier, achieving an efficiency rate of nearly 90% interception, a performance level that military analysts had previously considered impossible without radar guidance. However, victory came with a significant cost. One missile penetrated closer than anyone had anticipated, detonating less than 300 yards from the Freedom Rig's defensive perimeter. The massive blast wave tore through protective sandbags and shattered windows throughout the facility. 5 Marines sustained injuries, with 2 suffering severe burns and 3 left with ruptured eardrums. One sergeant permanently lost hearing in his right ear, a lasting reminder of how close the base came to complete annihilation. The battle's opening phase had concluded. China had expended $500 million worth of advanced weaponry and explosive ordnance into the night, and their only achievement was complete failure. Yet in Washington, the prevailing mood was not relief, but intense fury. Retaliation was no longer merely a possibility, it had become an absolute inevitability. China's plan appeared perfect on paper, but observe how the U.S. military transformed it into child's play. Before discovering what the U.S. military's response will be, please show your support by liking and subscribing to our channel. By 3:45 a.m., the smoke had barely begun to clear when U.S. cyber warfare analysts extracted the first crucial intelligence data. Every missile fragment and every jamming pulse carried a distinctive electronic signature. Within 7 minutes, triangulation data from surveillance satellites, P-8 Poseidon patrol aircraft, and underwater hydrophone networks all indicated the same direction. A Chinese strike group positioned less than 180 nautical miles away, operating in international waters but brazenly within striking range of the Freedom Rig. The intelligence data revealed a chilling picture. The task force's combined firepower exceeded $4.2 billion in military assets. A 65,000-ton aircraft carrier, 6 destroyers each equipped with 64 vertical launch cells, and 4 frigates providing layered defensive coverage. On their flight decks, more than 40 J-15 fighters capable of delivering another 100 tons of ordnance in a potential second-wave attack. Beijing had wagered that one decisive strike could humiliate Washington and establish absolute dominance throughout the South China Sea. Instead, the complete opposite occurred. In Washington, Pentagon's secure communication lines immediately activated. At 4:02 a.m., the chairman of the Joint Chiefs provided a direct briefing to the president. "We have confirmed intelligence. The attack originated from the Chinese naval fleet." The response was immediate and decisive. Submarines lurking beneath the Philippine Trench received orders to move into firing positions. Three EA-18G Growler aircraft fitted with next-generation jamming pods worth $90 million each lifted off from Guam Air Force Base. And in missile silos across the Pacific coast, two ballistic missiles, each equipped with warheads packing the explosive force of 500,000 pounds of TNT, were placed on 5-minute launch standby. The political ramifications were already seismic in scope. Beijing had crossed a line not witnessed since Pearl Harbor. This was no longer a minor skirmish. It represented an open act of war, and America's response would not be measured or proportional. It would be absolutely overwhelming. Join me now as we enter the heart of the battle and witness the full fury of the American military response. At 4:28 a.m., the ocean itself seemed to pause in anticipation. Then, like thunder erupting from the depths, the retaliation commenced. From 200 feet below the Philippine Trench, the USS Louisiana and Ohio-class nuclear submarines unleashed 20 Tomahawk cruise missiles. Each missile carried a 1,000-pound high-explosive warhead, bursting upward through the ocean surface and streaking toward the Chinese fleet at nearly 550 miles per hour. Simultaneously, from Andersen Air Force Base in Guam, three EA-18G Growler aircraft pierced the night sky. Their electronic jamming pods blanketed a 400-mile radius with complete electronic chaos, severing the fleet's ability to coordinate defensive responses. Overhead, swarms of 300 Switchblade and Phoenix Ghost unmanned aerial vehicles, each armed with armor-piercing explosive charges, moved like a living cloud of steel and fire, programmed to dive directly into radar domes, missile launch systems, and gun turrets. At 4:36 a.m., the first wave struck with devastating effect. The Chinese fleet immediately came alive, deploying HQ-9 surface-to-air missiles and experimental laser cannon systems mounted on their destroyers. During the opening minutes, more than 180 UAVs were eliminated, with burning debris raining into the sea. But the numbers tell the real story. 120 drones successfully penetrated the overwhelming close-in weapon systems. One after another, they slammed into CIWS turrets, radar arrays, and the bridge of a Type 052D destroyer. Within 3 minutes, the ship was completely engulfed in flames, its ammunition storage detonating in a fireball equivalent to 200 tons of TNT. The real devastating blow came next. At 4:41 a.m., two U.S. Army ATAC-MS ballistic missiles launched from Allied bases in the Philippines arced high above the stratosphere before plunging downward at Mach 5 velocity. The first missile splashed harmlessly into the water, but the second struck directly into a Zhangkai-class frigate, completely tearing it in half. Survivors leaped into burning seas as the wreckage disappeared beneath the waves. Then came the Tomahawk assault. Out of 20 missiles fired, 12 were successfully intercepted, but 8 penetrated the defenses. 4 slammed directly into the Chinese carrier Shandong, ripping open its flight deck, igniting nearly 60,000 gallons of aviation fuel and flipping parked J-15 fighters into twisted metal wreckage. Flames consumed the hangar deck completely, and within minutes, command and control systems on the carrier collapsed entirely. By 4:55 a.m., the once formidable Chinese fleet was in complete chaos. 2 destroyers were crippled, 1 frigate had been sunk, and Beijing's Pride, its aircraft carrier, was bleeding fire across the South China Sea. The message from Washington was unmistakable. America had not only survived the surprise ambush, but had transformed the night into an absolute nightmare for China. By 5:10 a.m., the South China Sea was no longer a theater of intimidation. It had become a maritime graveyard. The Shandong, Beijing's flagship, lay completely engulfed in flames. On its flight deck, wreckage of more than 30 J-15 fighters, each worth $60 million, burned in a devastating chain reaction that detonated fuel and ordnance across the carrier's core systems. The heat reached nearly 2,000 degrees Fahrenheit, buckling steel plating and forcing commanders to order an emergency abandon ship procedure. Meanwhile, the swarm of American UAVs had accomplished their mission. Over 120 drones had penetrated defensive layers, and though most were destroyed in suicide attacks, they left the Chinese destroyers completely crippled. 2 Type 052D warships listed heavily in the water, one gutted by internal explosions equivalent to 200 tons of TNT, the other dead in the water after its engines were completely shredded. At 5:18 a.m., the final devastating blow arrived. A second salvo of Tomahawks fired from the USS Missouri streaked in at sea-skimming altitude. Out of 10 missiles, 4 successfully broke through defensive systems. 1 completely obliterated a Junkai frigate, 2 ripped into the Shandong's command tower, and the last detonated inside a missile magazine. The result was absolutely catastrophic. A towering fireball rising more than 600 feet into the sky, visible to fishing villages nearly 80 miles away. Casualty figures mounted at a staggering pace. Within 40 minutes, more than 1,200 Chinese sailors were confirmed dead, with another 2,000 wounded or missing. The fleet's surviving vessels limped away, leaving behind burning oil slicks stretching 9 square miles across the sea. In purely financial terms, Beijing had lost nearly $7 billion in military hardware in a single night. For Washington, the message was crystal clear. This was no longer about defending an oil platform. It was about credibility, deterrence, and survival in the Indo-Pacific region. Beijing had gambled on delivering humiliation, but instead suffered the greatest naval defeat since World War II. As dawn broke over the wreckage, the world took notice. America had not just defended a rig, it had demonstrated that even under complete electronic blackout, its forces could fight, adapt, and crush an enemy fleet. The Pentagon's official statement carried words that echoed far beyond the Pacific. Let this be understood by every adversary. The United States does not initiate wars, but if attacked, it will finish them. The Dragon Fleet had fallen, and the balance of power in Asia had shifted decisively and perhaps permanently. By sunrise on September 12, 2025, the South China Sea had transformed from a chessboard of intimidation into a searing reminder of hard power projection. The wrecks of China's most advanced warships drifted in silence, oil slicks stretching for miles, while the United States stood unbroken. Beijing's gamble to strike first, blind American systems and seize dominance ended in flames, shattered steel, and a humiliation broadcast worldwide. Strategists in Washington quickly recognized the magnitude of this moment. This was not just a victory at sea, it was proof that the United States, even under the most sophisticated electronic attack, could still fight, adapt, and prevail against $500 million in Chinese munitions and a $7 billion fleet. American resolve and precision had prevailed at a cost measured not in defeat, but in survival. Yet the price was real. 5 Marines injured, 1 permanently scarred. A human reminder that freedom carries sacrifice. Their courage symbolized the heart of American defense. Technology may falter, but the will of its people never bends. For Beijing, the lesson was brutal. This was more than a naval disaster. It was a warning carved into history. Aggression against the United States and its allies would not secure dominance. It would invite ruin. And for the world, the message was unmistakable. The balance of power in Asia had not shifted toward China. It had been reaffirmed with overwhelming clarity in America's favor. Now I turn the question to you. Was this the night that truly ended China's naval ambitions, or is it just the beginning of a larger storm? Share your thoughts in the comments below. If you value in-depth analysis and storytelling like this, don't forget to like, subscribe, and support the channel. Together, we'll continue uncovering the truth behind the battles shaping our world.